And it's my honor to be here today. I wish to thank the organizer, especially Richard, for inviting the Bangko Sentral and Pilipinas to this very important and auspicious event. Let me talk about my business. My business is not about food. My business is not about beauty or about wellness. My business is about central banking. It's about keeping prices stable, ensuring that banks continue to be healthy and strong, and payments and settlement system continue to be reliable, efficient, and credible. That's what central banks do. And central banks are generally known for taking a measured and cautious approach to change. However, this reputation is slowly being turned upside down as the most pressing economic and social issue of our day, and has demanded big and bold actions from both monetary and financial authorities. What I'm talking about here is about the clamor for a smarter and more inclusive economic growth, a growth that promotes innovation and creativity and benefits a broader spectrum of society. Indeed, the plight of those belonging to the low-income group has become foremost among world leaders and policymakers' concerns. For many observers, including Nobel Prize winner Joseph Stiglitz, the global malaise that we are currently experiencing today can be attributed to persistent poverty and rising inequality, what he refers to as the Great Divide. We have seen nations leave economic unions, as with the Brexit and countries closing borders and favoring more inward-looking policies such as America First in the U.S. All these have been contributed to the uncertainty and complexity of the current operating environment. Now, amid such environment, next chart, achieving smart and inclusive growth and bridging the so-called Great Divide requires fundamental rethinking of how the financial system is structured and operates. And one idea that we can consider is what holds great promise and one that has been distinctly moving up to the reform agenda. And I'm talking about financial inclusion. In other words, central banks need to go big by going small. Now, it is through the small ones and the medium ones where the benefits of growth and policy effectiveness can be more broadly observed. Now, this chart will show that the latest report, this is in 2017, from the Philippine Statistical Office, show that the wholesale and retail sector, as well as accommodation and food services sector, dominate the business sector in the Philippines in terms of the number of establishments. More than 91% had a total employment of less than 20 workers. In fact, the average number of workers per establishment in this particular sector was only 10, indicating the smallness on average of the business enterprises in this otherwise big sector. But there is good news. The good news is that we can rely on solid macroeconomic fundamentals to provide us with a significant headway towards inclusive growth. If the macroeconomy is not doing well, it is very difficult for the micro, small, and medium enterprises to thrive, and for investors, both domestic and foreign, to start investing in small companies. The Philippine economy has experienced sustained uninterrupted expansion for the past 76 quarters. That would translate into 19 years. And over the past 5 years, the domestic economy expanded by more than 6.5% annually, providing more opportunities across all segments of society. This is the operating environment of small and medium enterprises in the Philippines today. Without so much growth, it is very difficult for micro, small, and medium enterprises to thrive. Now, the next chart will show that inflation has been low and stable, and inflation expectations continue to be well anchored. For the first 3 months of 2018, inflation rate averaged 3.8% based on the 2012 base year, and this was in line with the government's target range of 3% plus or minus 1 percentage point for the year 2018. Now, the next chart will show to us that parallel to our positive economic story is the steady growth of the banking system. The reforms put in place by the BSP, along with the bank's commitment to improve their ability to manage operational risks, have resulted in significant improvements in the quality of Philippine banks' assets and loan portfolio, as well as a strong capital base. And overall, bank capitalization is comfortably above both local and international standards, and bank lending continues to expand in double-digit rates and went mostly to productive sectors like manufacturing, financial services, real estate, and of course, utilities. Indeed, having solid macroeconomic fundamentals puts our country in a better position to attain inclusive growth. First, in an emerging and developing economy like the Philippines, keeping prices within target benefits the poor most, specifically the lowest income groups of the population. Now, we at the BSP track inflation rates for the poorest segment of Philippine society, cognizant of the difference in their basket of goods and economic behavior. We observe that this segment relies heavily on the ability of monetary policy to rein in inflation, especially because they feel a heavier brunt if we miss the target. Second, by tackling inflation and managing it well, we foster a conducive macroeconomic environment for investments, both domestic and foreign, supportive of job generation. Hence, monetary policy directly affects people's welfare and in turn affects economic opportunity as well as income distribution. Now, as the Central Monetary Authority recognized the role MSMEs, the small businessmen, that what they play to achieve national development and economic growth. MSMEs, the ones that we heard from this morning towards the afternoon, are the drivers of the Philippine economy. They comprise 99.6% of all registered business firms nationwide, and they contribute the largest share of total jobs generated at more than 63%. However, barriers to affordable capital and finance have significantly hampered their productivity. MSMEs account for a disproportionate share of only 36% of the country's gross domestic product. Now, let me talk about finding the missing middle. Now, in response, finding and funding every missing Juan and Maria at the frontier of the BSP's advocacy. As early as 2000, the BSP has played a key role in increasing access to financial services to the poor and low-income population by mainstreaming microfinance in the banking sector. In 2007, for example, 11 years ago, we progressed our advocacy of microfinance to financial inclusion. Our strategies are centered on 4 main areas. 1, developing an enabling policy, regulatory and supervisory environment. That's the first pillar. Second, advancing consumer protection and financial education. Third, promoting and advocating the development of microfinance operations. And finally, developing a data measurement and management framework to support policy. Now let me highlight a few of these initiatives. First, our efforts to develop an enabling policy environment has led to the physical expansion of banking services. From only 370 micro banking offices or scaled-down banks, there are now 747 that are accessible in 455 cities and municipalities all over the archipelago. Two, we have also worked on enhancing consumer protection and financial education. The BSP has launched the Financial Consumer Protection Framework in 2014, 4 years ago, to promote a culture of fair and responsible dealings with consumers and, in turn, encourage greater confidence in the financial system. Finally, in terms of advocacy programs, in 2008, the BSP initiated the Credit Surety Fund program, a credit enhancement scheme that aims to improve the creditworthiness of MSMEs. Normally, micro and small and medium enterprises do not have the collaterals and the credit history to be able to borrow from the banks. Now, by incorporating themselves into the CSF, a small businessman can borrow without the benefit of a collateral or a credit history. Because out of the contribution of the cooperatives, plus the counterpart funding coming from the Land Bank, DBP, the Industrial Guarantee Loan Fund, and of course, the local government, whether provincial or city government, they put up the fund, and this fund is the surety of all those borrowings of small businessmen without collateral and without credit history. So far, we have done 4 billion pesos and beneficiaries totaling 16,993 MSMEs. Now, more recently, we have also set our sight on leveraging on the so-called fourth industrial revolution, the development of the digital economy. New digital economy, new digital trends such as social media, big data, cloud computing are radically changing the business landscape. Now, digital innovations could act as catalysts to expand the breadth of inclusive finance to greater scale. The BSP is committed to drive modernization of the country's retail payment system, promote electronic retail payments, and facilitate interoperability for faster settlement of transactions. Now, the launch of the National Retail Payment System in partnership with industry stakeholders will help us achieve this vision of a cash-light economy. I was talking with some of the guests here, and they are into financial technology, into making sure that you are operating on an electronic payments platform. I think that is also an enabling and empowering platforms to make sure that even small business can thrive in this very competitive business landscape. So let me conclude by saying that the BSP is aware that its efforts cannot stand alone. To keep the engine growing and running, both the public and private sectors need to share the responsibility of making sure that no Filipino is left behind. This is, of course, this would entail other enabling policies beyond the mandate of a central bank, such as reducing red tape, eliminating corruption, and improving education and training to really capture the positive effects of financial inclusion. There are plenty of success stories, and I'm sure the messages this morning and this afternoon are very instructive to all of us. I do not need to mention IKEA, whose founder started this business by selling fish, Christmas decorations, and pens, and Starbucks, whose current chief was just an owner of another smaller startup coffee shop before becoming its CEO. Li Ka-shing of Hong Kong used to sell various plastic products before venturing into real estate. The orphan Leonardo Del Vecchio resigned as a factory worker to open his own molding shop and an eyeglass frame shop that expanded to become the world's largest sunglass maker, namely Ray-Ban and Oakley. Indeed, the goal of inclusive growth is a collective responsibility, and achieving it requires all of us to go big by going small. Thank you very much, at mabuhay po tayong lahat.